Hi everyone, it's been a really wet morning outside in the garden which has scuppered me getting to work out there. But I do have an order in this afternoon to make 2 gents buttonholes and 2 ladies pinned corsages, and I thought it would be nice to show you how I make these for a wedding. So I've got lovely ingredients here to work with that I've cut out of the garden last night. They've been having a nice drink in my cold garage overnight so they can condition, and they're in the best possible shape they can be in to get them ready to make a buttonhole. And I love making buttonholes and corsages because they're like little mini bouquets in miniature, and you can choose some lovely ingredients in the garden as well to make one. And you can choose things that are a bit different as well, that are shorter stem that you couldn't put in a bouquet normally, but you can put in a buttonhole. The main thing when you are going to be making hair flowers or buttonholes or corsages for weddings is to make sure that you're choosing flowers from the garden and foliage that you know is going to withstand being out of water and possibly out in some heat, although we don't have that problem too often in Scotland. But I did have a wedding at the weekend when the sun shone gloriously and the temperatures did really go quite high for us. They probably were in the early 20s on Saturday. So you just never know, and it's always better to be safe rather than sorry, and make sure you use really strong, sturdy, non-wilting flowers and foliage. So let's have a look at some of the ingredients that I have got to make these buttonholes. So when I'm asked to make a buttonhole or a corsage, there's normally a colour theme that goes with it. So I might have a gent that's in a tartan kilt, and it might be a green or a blue one, or it might be red based, and I'll have ladies outfit for pinned corsages where they want particular colours in it. So today the brief is to provide some gents corsages that will work well with blue colours in them, and I'm going to also be making a pinned corsage with pinks in it and one with reds in it as well. So what we've got over here is we've got some cornflowers. I've got some Sweet William foliage, because Sweet William and cornflowers, they are brilliant at holding up out of water. And along here I have got some Astrantias just coming in the garden just now. It's not completely fully out, but it'll be pretty in a buttonhole as well. I've got some blue cornflowers. Just look at the colour on those. Those are absolutely lovely, aren't they? And another thing that I really like putting in buttonholes is heather. And you also get so many different colours of heather. So here is more of a greeny cream one that I'll use in the gents buttonholes along with the blue. And this one here is more of a reddy tinge to the heather. So that'll go well in the corsage that wants to have some red in it. And over here, I have got some pink cornflowers from the garden. A bit more Sweet William, and I've also got some little ranunculus here. So one of the great things about ranunculus is that you do get those lovely, whopping great, ruffly flowers, but they also produce side buds, and you quite often get smaller flowers coming along with those that are brilliant for working with in hair flowers or buttonholes. So we're going to use some of those. And then down here I've got some dianthus pinks, which is a nice red colour, and that'll go well in the red corsage. And over here, I've got some hare's tail grass. I love using grasses in buttonholes because I just think they make them really quirky and a bit different, and they really have some great textures. So that's hare's tail bunny tail grass. And over here, I've got Brisa media, which I thought might be really pretty in the ladies' corsages. So that is a pretty one as well. Over here, we've got some nigella. Nigella will stand up in a buttonhole really well if you condition it thoroughly beforehand. So this has had a good soak overnight. Another ingredient that I really like adding into buttonholes is some rosemary. And rosemary is fantastic because it will stand up out of water really well, as long as it's not got too much new soft growth on it. But when it's been growing away well and it's hardened off, it's great in buttonholes. And also rosemary is a sign of remembrance, and I think that's quite nice if you were going to a wedding or getting married and you were wanting to remember somebody that was maybe not with you at that particular time for that special occasion. It's nice to put a sprig of rosemary in to remember them. I've got some ivy here, which I like to use as a backing for my buttonholes and corsages because everything sits really nicely against it, and then that sits really nicely against your lapel or your handbag where you're putting your decoration. And we've also got some roses down here, and I might go and have a look in the garden and see if I can find another one, because this one here really came out fully overnight, and that's maybe just a bit much. I didn't want it quite as open as that, but this one over here I think will be quite nice in it. So let's get started. So what do I use to make my buttonholes? Well, there's a few things I use. I use floristry wire. This is silver floristry wire, so it is quite thin and it is really good for just binding the stems and making them a bit sturdier. So you don't have to wire all the ingredients in a buttonhole or corsage. You just have to test each one and see what you think. So things like the heather, that's really stiff, sturdy stems that will not need wired. But things like my cornflowers over here, I like to wire them just so that you can manipulate them a little bit into place exactly where you want them to sit. Again, the nigella would be something that I would wire as well, and the ranunculus. But things like the Sweet William, I wouldn't need to, and the heather, I wouldn't need to. As well as the floristry wire, I also have some stem tape here, and this comes in different colours. I've got green there, brown. It really doesn't matter which you use because you're going to be covering it over anyway. And the stem tape is really funny stuff because it feels really rough to the touch just now, and you think, how is that going to hold on to my stems? But when you wrap it round and you pull it at the same time, it becomes very sticky, and it's excellent for taping up those stems once they've been wired. Another thing you're going to need is a couple of pins, which is really important for attaching your buttonhole or your corsage to your outfit or your handbag. Sometimes a lady might not like to attach her corsage to her dress if it's made of very delicate material, or she might not want to put a pin through a handbag. In that case, you could use a magnet if you wanted to. Although I tend to steer away from that now because I have found that the magnets are not always that strong, and I find pins more reliable. And I always provide more than one per corsage or buttonhole so that you've got a couple that you can use for adding them on. And the other thing that I use is twine, because I like a right rustic, natural look to my buttonholes because they've come from the garden, they're fresh, seasonal, and I want to just finish them off with something that I feel is quite natural rather than ribbon. And also I'll need my pair of snips just for snipping the stems to the right size. So here we go, here's my cornflower here. We're going to have a look at wiring it up, and it's quite a bendy stem at the moment, so I quite like to make it a stiffer, straighter stem that I can manipulate the flower into place in the buttonhole. So what you do is you have a look for the top here. So there's the flower, and then there's this section of the flower, and then the stem. And I just pop the wire through just below the flower there at the top of the stem. And I just push a little bit of the wire through. And then what I do is I bend it down like that, and then I wrap the longer piece of wire around the shorter one. And I don't go all the way down the stem because I'm going to have a few little bits of stem left. I'm not wrapping them up completely in stem wrap and twine, so I don't want to have wire going all the way down the stem on my flower, just enough to make it sturdier. And then what I do is I take my stem tape here, and I attach it, just hold it on at the top, and then I pull and twist at the same time to go around, and that just makes it sticky. And then it just rips off really easily with your fingers at the end. So there you go. I have got a wired cornflower, and it has a bit at the end here so that I can put this into water and keep it fresh. And I have this section here that's nice and sturdy and wired now, ready to go into a buttonhole. So what I'm going to do is put that back in the water just now until we're ready. If you can keep things as fresh as you possibly can, then that is really good with buttonholes. Right, let's have a look at this ranunculus. Going to take off that excess foliage because we don't need that. And I'm going to get another wire here. And I'm just going to push that through again. You're just looking at the very top of the stem there to put it through. And again, you are just folding that smaller section down, the longer section, and then wrapping the long section around the shorter one. And then applying our stem tape. So working at the top, holding it on right at the top there, twisting it round like that, and then breaking it off when you get to the bottom. And I just give it a little bit of a squeeze, make sure that just to make sure that the tape is all on nicely. That stem's still quite long, so I'm just going to snip it off a bit before putting it back in the water. So ivy makes a nice backing for a buttonhole, and I always wire this because, as you can see at the moment, the ivy is kind of bent right over. So if you put that against you, you're going to have to kind of really manipulate it into place. I would like it to be able to sit nice and flat. So to do that, again, I'm just going to take another bit of wire, and what you're going to do is you're just going to make a stitch in the back of your ivy leaf. So you put it in just at the 3/4 of the way up, I would say. Just make a little hole there, I don't know whether you can see that. And then I just bring it up a little bit further over. So I'll show you that closer up. There we go, you've just made a little stitch there. And again, it's just like before, you fold the two sides down. You've got a shorter one and a longer one. And then you wrap the longer one around the shorter one. And then I'll show you what that's done in a minute. Wrap it around there. Ivy is quite sturdy, so it's good to work with. And you don't have to use ivy as a backing for a buttonhole. Sometimes I just use nice foliage out the garden. Gonna hold on my stem tape at the top of where I put the wire, twist it round, give it a little squeeze to make sure it's all stuck on right. And then there you go, you can see that that's completely upright now. There's no bend to it. Let's see if we can see one that I haven't done yet. There you go, so that one's quite bent, whereas that one is completely upright. So that's how I want it to be. So for my two men's buttonholes, I have got my two ivy backings wired and ready now. So I'm going to look for some other ingredients. So I'm going to take my Sweet William, and I'm just going to take off the lower leaves because we don't need them. And Sweet William is quite sturdy, so I'm not going to wire that. So I just hold it on there like that. And I'm just going to add my stem tape and wire it around. Now normally I wouldn't be making buttonholes in the greenhouse, but it's quite a good place for me to video this for you. But normally it would be way too hot, but because it's been such a miserable day this morning, it's actually really chilly in here, so it was a good place to do the video today. So that's some Sweet William added there. And then we've got our wired piece of cornflower there that we're going to add in a minute, but I might just add the rosemary first and some heather. So I'm just going to add some rosemary on the side there. Sometimes it's nice to have the greenery just at the back, and then you can place the flowers on at the front so that they stand up nicely. So there we go, it's got some nice rosemary on there. And then I'm going to look for a piece of heather. Sometimes I use a few pieces of heather. I'm going to put that on the other side. And just take that on. Again, heather sits really nicely without needing wired. Twist that around, and you can see that again, I'm not going all the way to the bottom with my stem tape because I'm going to have some stem exposed so they can be in water to stay fresh, and also they'll just be trimmed so that the stem ends are coming out at the bottom. So I've got my nice cornflower there that I'm going to add in. Which is looking nice. And then I've also got some nigella that I have wired, so I'm going to put that onto the other side and tape that in. Nigella definitely needs taping and wiring because it's a bit more fragile. And what I might do just now is I'm just going to add some more heather in, and I might just add that underneath the nigella because it helps it to sit nicely there like that. And as you make a buttonhole, you can just adjust things and move things around until you're happy with it and it looks nice. So that's looking nice so far. And maybe a touch of heather on the other side. And then I'm going to add my grass. And that'll be my buttonhole ready. So we're going to add in our hare's tail grass now. So this is quite long, so I'll just give it a snip. So I'm just going to thread my hare's tail grass through just now at the back there. It should just slide through, and then that'll sit in the top of the buttonhole, which looks quite nice. tape that on. So our buttonhole's looking really nice now. I just need to add the twine, and then I'm going to sit it back in some water again, keep the stems long for just now until I am ready to give it to the customer to take away with them. So to add twine to your buttonhole, I just take the end here, keep it on the roll, and I tuck the end at the back behind it there. You're going to need a length at the back to tie it off at the end, so I just hold that on there. And then I'm going to just wrap my twine around from the base of the stem tape all the way up. So you don't want to see any of that stem tape, you want to have all your mechanics covered, but we do want to see those stems at the bottom. And by being able to add my buttonholes back into little jars of water, it means that you can actually pick up the buttonholes the day before and they'll be absolutely fresh. If you keep them in a nice cold place in that water and then just take them out before you need them, then they'll be absolutely great. So these buttonholes here are getting picked up today, which is Wednesday, for a wedding tomorrow. And then when you get to the top, you just need to cut off a length, make sure you've got enough to tie. And then you turn your buttonhole over and you'll have two lengths of twine at the back, and you just basically knot them together. And I do a double knot just to be sure, and then you can just trim those excess ends off at the back there. There we go. Now at this point, if I was ready to use it today, I would then trim my stems so that they were nice and neat just below where the twine is, and I would pop my pin in just in here. But because these are travelling overnight, they are going to sit in little jars of water. So what I do is I keep the stems long, and then they can drink up the water and they can just get snipped the next day. So we'll do that just now. We'll put them in a little jar of water. So there you go, that's the buttonhole already in its little jar of water to keep nice and fresh, and I'll put it in a cold, dark place until we need it. So pinned ladies' corsages work in exactly the same way as buttonholes do, but they just have a few extra flowers to make them extra pretty. So we're going to have a look just now at what we've got. I'm going to start off in the same way. I'm going to add some Sweet William to the ivy as a starting point. So build up the greenery at the back, and then I'm going to start adding the flowers. Now this is going to be the red one that we're doing here, so I'm going to add in some really nice red heather. And then I'm going to add in this really pretty red ranunculus that we had. Although I am wondering if it's just too far out actually. I'm wondering if I might be better putting on this one, because I think by tomorrow it'll really come out. So you just have to judge a flower and see what stage it's at and whether you want to use it or not. So I'm just going to wire this one up. And add some tape. So I've added my ranunculus there, and I think that looks better because it's not fully out. And I'm going to tuck some little red Sweet William around the front to frame it. I might just now have a look at where I can put some of these grasses in. See if they'll tuck behind the heather, because they would look quite pretty there, I think. And just see them just in the back there. They look nice. Got a nice bud here of a ranunculus. I'm going to take off the extra foliage and then wire that. Add it in. Do like adding buds in. I like adding seed pods, seed heads in. Later in the season they look really nice. I might do another buttonhole video later in the year when it's getting to more late summer, early autumn, because there's some really nice things you can put in buttonholes then as well. So this is our little red one that we've made so far that's looking nice. Just by wiring it, you can just manipulate it a little bit into place. So I had a look at my cornflowers, and this one is really fully out, which would be absolutely fine if somebody was wearing it today. But because the wedding is tomorrow, I'm actually going to wire up this one that's not quite as fully out, and I think by tomorrow it'll be looking perfect. I've also wired up the astrantia in the buttonholes because that is something that's got a bit of a floppier stem, and I like to be able to put the astrantia where I'd like it into the corsages. The grasses I don't wire up, I just slot them in. So here we go, this is our corsage that's starting to take place. So it's got some grasses in it now. It's got some pink sweet william, it's got some nice heather. I'm going to put the cornflower in now. I'm actually going to take that extra bit of greenery off because I don't think we need it. So that's a nice pink cornflower there. And then I've got my wired astrantia. I'm wiring it as well because it's just the beginning of the season for astrantia, so it's maybe not quite as firm as it would be if it had been out for a couple more weeks and fully open. But it's too pretty not to include. And then I think I might put a nice nigella on the front there. And I'm going to wire up that nigella. I have got another nigella here, but I just think that that's going to be too big and it's just going to be a bit overwhelming. So here we are, all finished making the buttonholes, and they're just sitting in some water just now. So this is one of the ladies' corsages that you can see here. I'll show you a bit closer up in a minute. We've got another ladies' corsage here with nice pinks. And then we've got our buttonholes all ready as well. So we can have a closer look up at these and see what are in them. And here's our buttonhole all ready to go. It's got that lovely blue cornflower in it, the lovely rosemary for a bit of scent and a significance of remembrance. And we've got our nice nigella, our lovely white tipped Scottish heather, that great hare's tail grass in the back, and some sweet william. So that's looking really nice and it'll hold up really well tomorrow for the wedding. Here we go, here is our ladies' corsage. And it's just got a few more flowers in it. So it's got some astrantia, some heather, some breeze media grasses, some sweet william, pink cornflower, some nigella, some ranunculus plano, and a rose bud over there. So here's our red theme corsage. It's got our lovely red ranunculus buds in it, some red tinged heather, some ranunculus plano. It's got our Brisa media grasses. It's got our red dianthus, some red astrantia, some nice ranunculus buds. I hope you enjoyed finding out how I make buttonholes and pin corsages today. I really love making them. I love making these miniature bouquets out of the best ingredients that I can find in the garden on that particular day. And hopefully in the coming weeks and months as the growing season continues, I can show you how I make some of my other wedding arrangements too, like my bouquets.